I was halfway through rewriting a stubborn block of code when a photo appeared in the corner of my laptop screen, floating there like it owned the place. It wasn't one of mine. Wrong suitcase, wrong car, wrong hand resting on the handle, and the caption hovering under it, "See Weekend starts now," felt like a clap in the room, even though nobody else was there. For a moment I didn't move, the cursor blinking on a half-finished variable name while my brain tried to decide if it should laugh, throw the laptop through a window, or just sit with it. I chose the fourth option. Keep sitting. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. It wasn't the first odd thing I'd seen on that laptop this month. Strange notifications, new names popping up in Hailey's message previews, her sudden enthusiasm for networking lunches with no receipts. But this one was the first that didn't bother hiding what it was. There she stood behind the suitcase, well, half visible in the reflection, snapping a photo of her weekend getaway with the man she kept referring to as just someone from a previous chapter. I closed the airdrop window slowly, like I was afraid the thing might bite. You'd think I'd be furious, or heartbroken, or at least flustered enough to knock over the mug of cold coffee beside me. I didn't feel any of that. Instead, my mind clicked into place with a kind of clarity that felt almost mechanical. A switch flipped, and everything sharpened. Maybe it was shock. Maybe self-preservation. Maybe something I'd been brewing without noticing. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling, listening to the familiar hum of my old workshop. The place looked like someone had thrown a tech museum and a garage sale into a blender. Half-built prototypes, spare circuitry, testing devices, notebooks full of scribbles that made sense only to me. Hailey always said it looked like a hobby room for someone who couldn't pick a hobby. I used to laugh that off. The laughter stopped being real months ago. The door opened before I even processed the footsteps. Hailey's heels clicked across the living room, and in a moment, she was standing in my doorway, framed by the hall light like she was posing for a catalog cover. "You didn't answer my text," she said, arms crossed, nails polished to a mirror shine. Her expression already had that edge she used when preparing a speech she thought would change my behavior. "What text?" My voice sounded normal, pleasant even. She gave a short breath through her nose. "Owen, don't start. You always ignore things when it's inconvenient." Interesting choice of words. "I've been working," I said, tapping the keyboard lightly. "Yeah, well." She glanced at the open laptop on my desk. "Could you look at me for 1 second without a screen between us?" There it was again. That tone she used to pull when she pretended she wanted connection, but really wanted control. I swiveled my chair to face her. She had a new coat on, beige with a wide collar. Not her usual style. Something you'd wear to impress someone you weren't married to, someone who didn't know all your old outfits. "You dressed up," I said casually. She stiffened a little. "So?" "I've been at work. My boutique had a meeting. Investors." I nodded like this wasn't the 4th meeting with investors this week, all scheduled after she spent an hour fussing over her hair, checking angles in the mirror, and deleting notifications faster than I could glance. Her eyes drifted toward my laptop. "What's that? Something wrong with your app again?" "Just a file transfer." Her brows pulled together. "Whose?" "Yours." That made her blink. "Mine? What are you talking about?" I didn't answer, not directly. Instead, I asked, "You packed a suitcase today?" Now she went still, not dramatically, but enough for me to catch it. She composed herself quickly, pulling out that tight half-smile she used when lying. "I'm going to the coast with Tessa. Girls' trip. I told you already. Are you seriously pretending you forgot?" I tilted my head. "Girls' trip. Yeah. A break. You know, something fun? You should try that sometime." "Fun." Sure, that was what she meant. Her phone vibrated in her hand. The screen lit up. A name flashed. Cole. She didn't react fast enough. I didn't comment. I just watched her tuck the phone against her side like I hadn't seen it. Anyway, she said briskly, I came to tell you something. That was her transition tone, moving from deception to justification. She took a breath and let it out slowly. Look, Owen, my friends think our relationship is not great. They say you're too routine, that you don't put effort into anything anymore, that you're... She hesitated, as if trying to soften it but settling on the raw version. They think you're boring. And honestly, sometimes I agree with them. Her voice had that rehearsed rhythm. She'd practiced this. In the bathroom, probably. Or in the passenger seat of Cole's car. So, she continued, I talked with them, and with Cole, and we decided we're taking a romantic weekend to the sea, just to see where things stand. She waited for a reaction. Any reaction. I gave her none. Instead, I said, Good thing I didn't put you on the deed for the beach house. It was as if the floor under her shifted. Her lips parted. She blinked twice, trying to connect dots that weren't aligning anymore. What? What did you just say? Her voice turned thin, almost shaky. Stop, no, what do you mean by that? I let the silence do its work. It hit harder than anything I could have yelled. She stared at me like I was suddenly speaking a different language, one she should have learned years ago but never bothered to. Then she stepped forward. Owen, don't play games. What do you mean? You said... I said nothing, I interrupted gently. You assumed. She swallowed hard. Her eyes flicked toward my laptop like she wanted to snatch it and throw it out the window, because now she understood just enough to be frightened of the rest. Before she could speak again, her phone buzzed. Another message. Another chance for her to lie. But she didn't check it. She was too busy examining my face like she'd never truly seen it. I stood up and walked past her into the living room. She followed, hovering, unsure whether to argue or plead. I opened the closet, pulled out my jacket, and laid it over the armchair. You're leaving now? She asked quickly. No, not yet. Then what are you doing? Thinking. She stared as I returned to my workshop and powered off my laptop. Then I unplugged 3 small devices from my charging station. Each one belonged to her boutique's back-end access, the tools she used to manage her inventory listings, her ads, her entire online traffic pipeline. She didn't realize what they were. That made it easier. Are you okay? She asked, voice wavering. I'm fine. You're scaring me. No raised voice, no anger, and that scares you? I asked. Interesting. She wrapped her arms around herself. Can we talk? Calmly? Without making it weird? I walked to her, but not close enough for her to mistake it for comfort. You left the house today with a suitcase, I said, and a plan, and a man waiting in your car. I didn't react then, and I'm not reacting now. Her lips pressed together. I told you. It's just a weekend, a test. Of what? My tolerance? Your creativity? Your friend group's imagination? Stop, she whispered. Please. But I wasn't doing anything to stop. I opened the front door and stepped outside. The cool coastal air swept in. She followed me onto the porch, clutching her phone like a lifeline. You're not even going to fight for this? She demanded. Fight. Interesting choice. Why? I asked softly. You already left. Her face tightened. Owen. A car horn sounded as a dark sedan pulled into our driveway. Cole's car from the photo. The universe had good comedic timing today. Hailey stiffened. Do not embarrass me. Do not say anything in front of him. I won't, I said. Cole stepped out, sunglasses still on even though the sun was sinking behind the trees. He grinned, like he was proud of himself for existing. Hey, Owen, he said, like we were old pals. Hope you don't mind me swinging by. Not at all, I replied. His grin widened. Nice of you to see it that way. He moved toward Hailey, placing a hand on her back in a way that was supposed to be subtle. It wasn't. She flinched slightly, as if embarrassed, but didn't pull away. Then he caught sight of my old truck, parked crooked next to the workshop. "Still driving that thing?" he said with a chuckle. "Man, you and your projects." I stepped down the porch stairs slowly, calmly. He expected some sort of outburst. People like him always did. They wanted scenes, dramatic declarations, the kind of chaos they could retell to friends later. I wasn't giving him that, but I wasn't stepping aside either. He moved toward his car to open the trunk. I shifted just slightly, enough that he had to adjust his path. Not blocking, just not yielding. It irritated him instantly. "Move," he said lightly. But that light tone had a bite under it. "I'm standing," I replied. "If you want space, you're welcome to walk around." He wasn't used to someone refusing him in such a mild way, so he tried to shoulder past me. I let his shoulder connect with mine, not hard enough to do anything, but firm enough that it surprised him. His step faltered. He slipped on the loose gravel patch beside the driveway, catching himself awkwardly on the trunk edge. He glared, expecting me to apologize. I didn't. Hailey rushed to him. "Cole, are you okay?" "I'm great," he muttered. "Your guy's just a little touchy." "Actually," I said quietly, "I'm completely calm." And the way I said it made him reconsider his tone. He laughed it off, but uneasily. "Let's go," Hailey whispered to him. "We're late." Late. Another good choice of words. She cast me one last look. Mixed fear, mixed confusion, mixed something she didn't want to name. She opened her mouth like she wanted to say more, then closed it. They got into the car. The engine rumbled. They reversed down the driveway. Before they turned onto the road, Hailey rolled down her window an inch. "We'll talk when I get back," she said carefully. "Sure," I said. The car pulled away. I waited until the taillights disappeared down the street. Then my phone pinged. A message from Bryce. "Just so you know, Hailey showed everyone pics of your workshop today. Said it looks like a kid built it." There were laughing emojis after that. The clarity in my head sharpened further. This wasn't a fracture. It was a pattern. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I wasn't numb to it. I closed the message, put the phone in my pocket, walked back inside my house. There was no tremble in my hands, no spiral of confusion, no desperate pleading with myself to understand her choices. Only the steady, growing certainty that this was the moment something essential shifted in me. The moment I stopped being the quiet one, the moment I started planning. And if Hailey thought going to the sea without me was an adventure, she had no idea what kind of weekend she had actually started. Not yet. But she would. The house was quiet the next morning, but it wasn't the peaceful kind of quiet. It felt more like the world holding its breath, waiting for something to shift. I woke before the alarm, sat at the edge of the bed, and listened to the hum of the heater and the distant sound of the shoreline. My mind had never felt sharper, not restless, not frantic, just focused. Clarity can be unsettling when you're used to second-guessing yourself. I made coffee, sat at the dining table, and opened my laptop. Hailey's airdrop was gone, but the impact of it lingered behind everything I did. I opened the admin panel for the boutique tools I had built for her business, the same tools she depended on for advertising, inventory tracking, and online visibility. When we first started dating, she said she loved that I made her world feel easier. I didn't mind helping. I liked building things that helped people grow. But I built the tools. I maintained them. I owned them. And ownership matters. I clicked through the tabs one by one, watching the interface I designed unfold like a blueprint. Access logs, permissions, API keys, the usual digital skeleton of a business. Then I hovered over external user access and saw her name, listed in 3 places she never had the right to use without me approving it. She'd added backdoor logins months ago, quietly, the same way she'd been shifting her loyalty. I removed her access. Click, click, click. 3 simple confirmations. Next, I reviewed the shared financial account I opened for emergencies. Only emergencies. The number of boutique-related purchases linked to that card had grown alarmingly in the last few weeks. Dresses, decor, bulk shipments, all routed through what she assumed was a never-ending allowance. I froze the card. No drama, no message. Just a click. If she wanted her boutique to run on style and ambition alone, let her prove she could. I wasn't her ladder anymore. As the changes saved, a calm settled over me. Not triumphant, not cold, just steady, like tightening bolts on a frame that had been rattling too long. My phone buzzed. A message from the real estate attorney who handled my beach house paperwork. "Morning, Owen. Confirming again that Hailey has no claim to the property. Let me know if you need documentation today." I typed back, "Send everything." A second later, a folder appeared with scanned documents, signatures, timestamps, the whole legal maze neatly arranged. I reviewed each page like I was checking code for bugs. Everything clean, everything indisputable. I leaned back in my chair and exhaled slowly. The morning sunlight stretched across the living room floor, catching on the dust floating in the air. The world was functioning normally, even if I wasn't. Right on time, there was a knock on the door. Not a polite knock, a ready or not kind of knock. 2 sharp taps, a pause, then 3 quick ones. I didn't need to ask who it was. Tessa and Marin walked in the moment I opened the door, not waiting for permission. They had Hailey's spare key, something I hadn't realized she'd given out. Both wore matching pastel jackets, oversized sunglasses, and expressions that said they felt incredibly important. "Don't mind us," Marin said as she brushed past me. "We're just grabbing her things." "You weren't invited in," I said. "Relax," Tessa replied. "Hailey said it's fine." Funny how quickly people treat your home like a thrift store when they think they've won something. They headed straight for the bedroom, chatting loudly about beach outfits and plans for the weekend. I followed them, watching them toss Hailey's belongings into open bags as if preparing for a magazine shoot. When they spotted my jacket on the armchair, Tessa tossed it aside like it was clutter. "Put that back," I said quietly. She froze for half a second before rolling her eyes. "It was in the way." "Don't be so tense." "I'm not tense," I replied. "You're in my house without my permission." Marin waved her hand. "Hailey said we could. It's the same thing." "No," I said, stepping closer. "It's not." She stopped folding Hailey's blouse and turned, finally noticing that my calm wasn't the calm they expected, the passive kind they were used to exploiting. This was different, intentional, controlled. "Look," she said, "we're being nice. We came to help her. If you want to have a conversation later about your dynamic, that's between you and her." "Give me the key," I said. "What?" "The key she gave you. Hand it over." They looked at each other, then laughed. Actually laughed, loud enough to echo in the hallway. Tessa placed her hands on her hips. "You're being dramatic." I opened her purse and pulled the key out myself. "Hey!" she shouted. "You don't get to walk into my home," I said, "and you certainly don't get to walk out with anything that belongs to me." "What are you talking about?" she snapped. I motioned to their bags. "Open them." "We're not doing that." "You came into my house. Open the bags." The edge in my voice wasn't raised. It didn't need to be. They hesitated, then slowly unzipped their oversized totes. I reached in and pulled out 2 of my sweatshirts, a charging cable, and a pair of headphones. "Oh, those?" Marin said. "We thought those were hers." "You thought a large sweatshirt with my initials embroidered inside the collar was hers." She flushed. I placed my belongings on the bed. "If you're done, leave." Now they were stiff, visibly rattled. The kind of rattled people get when they realize the person they thought they could control wasn't playing along. "We'll tell Hailey you were rude," Tessa threatened. "By all means," I said. "Tell her." They stormed out, slamming the door as hard as they could. The frame shook, but the house remained standing, steady as ever. I sat again at my desk, poured myself a cup of fresh coffee, and opened the next set of files. Screenshots, messages, timestamps. Everything I'd quietly collected over the past few weeks since things started smelling off. Patterns emerged. Late-night messages. Strange charges. Deleted call logs that sync backups had preserved on my cloud. A few photos marked as hidden on her phone that she didn't realize synced to my old device. I wasn't hacking anything. I wasn't snooping. I was just looking at the digital trail she'd accidentally left behind in places I legally owned. But as I reviewed everything, a notification appeared on my screen that made me pause. Account alert. Legacy cloud access. Active. Active? Only one other person had ever had legacy access. Bryce, my cousin. The same Bryce who sent me that smug message yesterday. The same Bryce who loved gossip more than food. The same Bryce who once offered to optimize my sync system and then gave himself permanent access without telling me. I clicked on the access log. My stomach tightened, not in fear, but clarity. He'd been downloading files for weeks. Photos, messages, notes, screenshots. Not mine, Hailey's. And he had been feeding them to her friends. Maybe to Hailey, too. I closed the laptop. The clarity from yesterday was now refined. Focused. Sharp enough to slice through the fog I'd been living in. I grabbed my jacket and keys and headed for the door. Bryce lived 20 minutes away, in a rented house with a sagging porch and peeling paint he kept saying he would fix when he had time. I pulled into his driveway and saw him on the porch with his phone in hand, laughing as he spoke to someone on speaker. "Yeah, he totally bought it," he was saying. "I told her he'd probably sulk all weekend. You know how he is. Sensitive, predictable. She deserved better." Sensitive. Predictable. He had no idea I was already walking toward him. When he looked up and saw me, he froze mid-sentence. "Oh, Owen," he stammered, fumbling to lower the phone. "Hey, man. I was just—" I took the phone out of his hand. Not snatching, just taking. Firm. Calm. "What are you—" Before he could finish, I walked to the edge of his porch and dropped the phone into the decorative pond he kept next to the walkway. It fell with a quiet splash, sinking beneath the algae-coated surface. Bryce gasped. "What did you do that for?" "You know what you did," I said. He opened and closed his mouth like a fish, struggling for words. "Owen, you're being unreasonable. It was just a joke, just harmless fun." "Fun," I repeated. "You shared my files, my photos, my private messages." "It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. I didn't mean anything by it. They were all laughing and You handed my life to people who treated it like cheap entertainment." He swallowed hard. "Owen, I'm your cousin." "Exactly." He shut up then. Completely. I stepped closer. Not threateningly, just enough that he felt the shift. "You don't get access to my world anymore," I said. "Not my files, not my trust, not anything." He nodded frantically, as if agreeing could undo what he'd already done. I walked back to my truck without waiting for him to reply. When I closed the door, my phone buzzed again. A message from the real estate attorney. "There's something you should see at the beach house. Better check today." I stared at the message, feeling that same steady clarity roll through me again. The kind that didn't rush. The kind that didn't panic. The kind that knew the next move was inevitable. I turned the key in the ignition. If Hailey and her circle thought they were writing the script, they were wrong. I was the one holding the pen now. The drive to the beach house felt longer than usual, even though it was barely an hour away. The sky had that uneven gray look it gets before coastal weather changes its mind, and the wind pushed at the truck like it wanted me to turn around. I didn't. The attorney's message sat in my mind the whole way, quiet but firm. Whatever waited for me, there wasn't going to fix itself. When I took the last turn down the gravel road, I already saw the problem before I even reached the house. The front door was open. Not wide, just enough to say someone didn't care if it closed properly. The welcome mat was crooked, a beach chair was tipped over on the porch, and there were footprints across the wooden steps. Several sets, not just one. I parked, but didn't get out right away. I sat there, hands on the wheel, watching the curtain in the front window flutter from the breeze slipping through the open door. Something felt wrong. Not in a dramatic way, not in a horror movie kind of way, just wrong in a practical, everyday sense, like walking into your workshop and seeing someone else's fingerprints on your tools. When I finally stepped out of the truck, I walked to the porch slowly. No rush, no panic, just intention. The closer I got, the more things I noticed. A half-empty soda can on the railing, a scarf hanging from the doorknob, a couple of sandy footprints on the wooden boards. Inside, the smell hit me first. Not bad, just different. Perfume, cheap cologne, the scent of a scented candle that wasn't mine. I stood there for a few seconds, taking in the living room. They hadn't even tried to be discreet. The couch cushions were rearranged like someone had been lounging. A stack of my jackets was strewn across the armchair as if someone had tried them on. My coffee table was littered with takeaway wrappers. A couple of Hailey's boutique bags sat on the floor, stuffed with clothing. And more telling than anything else, a pair of man's sunglasses on the countertop. Coals. I stepped farther inside, scanning the house the way a builder checks a structure for cracks. Voices drifted down the hallway. Familiar ones. Hailey's sharp whisper, Marin's airy chatter, Bryce's nervous laugh. They carried through the house as if they owned the acoustics. I followed the sound to the kitchen, where the group stood around my dining table like they were hosting a casual brunch. Hailey jumped when she saw me. Cole almost dropped the fork he was holding. Bryce went pale enough that I wondered if he'd need to sit down. Marin covered her mouth like she'd been caught stealing cookies, and Jody, sitting cross-legged on my table, slowly slid off it like she thought I hadn't noticed. "Owen," Hailey said with an overly bright tone, as if greeting me at a party. "We didn't know you were coming." "I can see that," I replied. Cole stepped forward with a grin that tried to look confident but didn't quite make it. "Hey man, we're just hanging out. Hailey said it was okay." My gaze shifted to her. "Did you?" She swallowed hard. "We were just using the house for the weekend, since you never use it." "You thought wrong." Cole leaned against the wall, arms crossed, pretending this was some casual misunderstanding. "Look, don't be uptight. It's a cool place. We figured—" I stepped closer, just enough to make him straighten. "You figured what?" He blinked rapidly, suddenly reconsidering his confident posture. The room went unusually quiet after that. Even Bryce, who couldn't normally stay silent for more than 7 seconds, stayed still. He tried to shrink behind Hailey, which would have been funny if the situation wasn't so pathetic. I walked past them into the living room and picked up my jackets from the floor, evaluating which ones had been tried on. Then I gathered the wrappers and stacked them neatly on the table just to clear space. The whole time, nobody spoke. When I turned back, I said, "Before anyone leaves, we're going to sort out what belongs to whom." Marin laughed nervously. "Oh, come on, we didn't take anything." I nodded at the tote bag by her feet. "Open it." Her jaw tightened. "Why?" "It's just Hailey's stuff." "Open it," I repeated, same tone as before. She hesitated, then slowly bent down, unzipped the bag, and stepped back as I looked inside. A set of my house keys, one of my camera lenses, a sweatshirt that definitely wasn't hers, and, surprise, my portable speaker. "It must have fallen in there," she said quickly. "I didn't—" I held up a hand. "Go get the others." Hailey opened her mouth like she wanted to defend them, then closed it. She bent down and grabbed her own bag, pushing it onto the counter with shaky movements. Inside, I found 2 of my books, a charger, and a jacket that still had my name tag inside from a conference years ago. I didn't say anything. Not yet. Silence, it seemed, was more effective than any lecture. Next was Bryce. He clutched his backpack like I might confiscate his soul. When I reached for it, he stepped back instinctively. "Owen, listen," he said, voice shaking. "I didn't mean anything by it. They were taking stuff and I thought it was fine." I opened the bag. Inside was one of my old notebooks, the one with sketches for an app prototype I never finished. "Put it on the table," I said. He placed it down like he was handling something fragile. I looked at all of them. "You walked into my house without permission. You went through my things. You tried to leave with items that aren't yours." Hailey looked ready to cry. "I didn't think you'd be here today." "You weren't supposed to think anything," I said calmly. "You were supposed to ask." Cole stepped forward again, though not as boldly this time. "Look, man, I get you're upset." I stepped toward him, and he instantly stepped back. The living room lamp behind him rattled from how quickly he moved. "I'm not upset," I said. "Let's not mislabel the situation." He shut up. Hailey finally found her voice. "Can we just talk? Please, calmly?" "You're the one who walked into my house with 5 people," I replied. "I'm calm. I'm asking for accountability." Her face crumpled slightly, the realization hitting that I wasn't yelling, wasn't shaking, wasn't pleading for explanations, just standing there, grounded and quiet. That seemed to unravel her more than anything. I reached into my bag and pulled out the folder the attorney had sent me. I placed it on the counter. "This is the deed," I said. "You're not on it, not even close." She stared at the folder like it had teeth. "I checked," I added. "Twice." "Why are you doing this?" she whispered. "You're the one who brought your friends here," I answered. "You're the one who told them it was yours to use." Cole huffed. "She said you 2 shared it." "We shared weekends," I said. "Not ownership." His jaw tightened. "You're being too rigid, man. It's a house." "It's my house." That shut him up again. I started picking up the scattered belongings, books, jackets, charging cables, and placing them into a neat pile. The sound of things being put in their correct places was the only noise in the room. It filled the space with an unspoken message. When I turned back to them, I said, "Everyone leave your bags. I'll check them. Then you go." Jody cleared her throat. "You can't just—" "I can," I said, "and I am." They put their bags down, slowly, reluctantly, like they were placing live devices on the floor. I checked each one. The more I found, the quieter the room got. A few items weren't intentional theft. Some genuinely belonged to Hailey, but others were unmistakably mine. Small things that people think won't be missed. Until they are. When the last bag was sorted, I handed each person only what belonged to them. Nothing more. Then I turned to Bryce. "Your car keys." He blinked. "What about them?" "Give them to me." "Why?" "Because you're going home on foot." He gaped. "That's ridiculous. It's miles." "Hand them over." He begrudgingly dropped them into my palm. I walked to the porch, stepped outside into the wind, and tossed them far into the dunes. Out of sight. The wind swallowed the sound. Bryce's jaw hung open. Marin stared at me like she was finally realizing who I was under all the quiet. Cole muttered something under his breath but took a step back when I made eye contact. "You can all leave now," I said. They hesitated. Not one of them wanted to be the first to move. Eventually, Marin gathered her coat, Jody grabbed her purse, and they shuffled toward the door. Bryce lingered, looking furious and miserable at the same time. Hailey stayed behind, frozen in place. "Owen," she said softly, "please, can we talk outside? Alone?" No, I said. We talk now, with all of this open. Her eyes welled, and she bit her lip like she wanted to turn back time, undo something, erase something. But the moment was gone. She knew it. As the others walked out into the fading daylight, Cole paused in the doorway and turned toward me. "You're setting yourself up for a big mistake," he said. I stepped toward him, not threatening, just decisively. "No," I replied. "I'm correcting one." He quickly walked out after the others. Hailey stared at the floor. "I didn't think it would go like this." "You never think ahead," I said. "Only sideways." She flinched. "Can I at least explain?" "You've been explaining for weeks," I replied. "Not with words, with choices." She pressed a hand to her forehead. "I didn't want to hurt you. But you didn't want to be honest either." She looked like she might collapse under her own regret. I didn't move to help her. I wasn't cruel. I just wasn't rescuing her from consequences she created. Finally, she grabbed her bag and walked toward the door. She hesitated one last time, then walked out without another word. I stayed in the house long after the sound of footsteps faded. The wind picked up outside, pushing the curtains inward slightly, making the walls creak. It felt like the whole structure was exhaling, grateful someone finally cared enough to restore order. Then my phone vibrated. A message. Cole blocked the doorway when we tried leaving. He said you wouldn't just walk away. It wasn't signed, but I knew whose number it was. I looked at the message, then at the darkening porch. Then I stepped outside. Whatever was coming next, I was ready. The storm built itself steadily along the coastline, the kind that didn't roar but pressed down on everything like a warning. By the time I stepped off the porch and into the thickening wind, the air felt charged, as if the shore was holding its breath along with me. The message on my phone still glowed on the screen, the short line from an unfamiliar number telling me what I had already expected. Cole wasn't done. He wanted a confrontation, or maybe he wanted an audience. Either way, I wasn't planning on dragging this moment out any longer. I walked toward the edge of the porch, letting the boards shift under my weight. The sky above the shoreline hung low and mean. The last streaks of daylight were fading behind the dunes when Cole stepped back into view. He stood at the top of the stairs like he belonged there, shoulders squared, jaw clenched tight. He was breathing hard, like he'd been pacing. His hair was mussed from the wind, and his eyes had that restless gleam in them, part thrill, part bravado. "You're not just walking away," he said without preamble. "I already started," I replied. He took a step down the porch stairs, planting his feet firmly like he'd practiced this pose in a mirror. "You made a fool out of me back there." "You handled that on your own," I said. "You think you can embarrass people and then just leave? You think you're the only one allowed to have a voice?" I walked past him, heading toward the gravel path that led to the driveway. He moved to block me. The wind tugged at the hem of my jacket as I stopped, looking at him for a moment that stretched longer than either of us expected. "Move," I said. "No," he answered, crossing his arms. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't lift a hand. I just shifted my weight the slightest bit, so he had to adjust his stance or lose balance. That tiny motion irritated him more than anything else. He took a step closer, too close, the porch light flickering above us like it was choosing sides. "You think you're better than everyone?" he pressed, "with your quiet little routines and your tech toys and your I'm above all this attitude?" "I think you came into my house," I said evenly, "and decided you'd rewrite the rules." He scoffed. "You don't even use half the things you own. You don't use the house enough. You don't use your own life enough. You're predictable." Meanwhile, she wanted something exciting, something real, something... I didn't let him finish. I took one step forward, not forceful, just decisive, closing the gap between us. His words faltered. His voice dropped off like he'd suddenly run out of lines from the script he'd practiced. "Say whatever you want," I said, "but say it on your own property, not mine." He exhaled sharply through his nose. "You're unbelievable." I've heard that before. He tried to laugh, but it came out uneven. You know what? I'm not letting you walk out like you're some hero. I never claimed to be a hero. The wind picked up again, sweeping between us with enough force to rattle the porch railing. For a moment, neither of us moved. The tension wrapped itself around the small space between us like an elastic thread ready to snap. Then Cole lunged. He wasn't graceful about it. He was fast, yes, but reckless. His shoulder collided with mine, his weight pushing forward in a messy attempt to intimidate or knock me off balance. Instead of stumbling, I stepped back enough to absorb the impact, letting his momentum carry him forward. He hit the porch table behind me with a clatter as the table tipped onto its side. He hissed under his breath, rubbing his forearm. The storm wind slammed the screen door behind us, making him jump. "You think you're tough now?" he barked. "You think just because you changed the locks in your head, you get to walk around like some champion?" I didn't bother answering. Instead, I nudged the fallen table upright, as calmly as if rearranging furniture during normal housekeeping. My silence threw him off even more. He shoved me again, harder this time. I stepped aside quickly, keeping my footing on the slick boards. He nearly slipped when the wind gusted across the porch, grabbing at his jacket. He flailed for balance, swearing under his breath as he caught himself on the railing. I watched his hands clench and unclench, as if he couldn't decide whether he wanted to throw another shove, a punch, or just run out of things to say. "You're nothing like what she said," he muttered finally. "She said you were passive, soft, predictable." "I was," I replied. "Not anymore." He tried to come at me again, but this time I turned sideways just enough that he ran into empty air. The boards creaked as he lurched past me, crouching slightly as he regained footing. He looked back at me with a mixture of frustration and disbelief. "You're doing this on purpose," he accused. "Yes." He wiped his palms on his jeans, his breath uneven. "You're not walking away from me." "Watch me," I said, turning toward the steps. He darted in front of me again, blocking the path with both arms outstretched like he owned the whole Atlantic coast behind him. I didn't stop walking. I simply adjusted my trajectory by a fraction, making him shift or risk getting knocked off balance himself. His feet scrambled on the slick wood as he backed up, not wanting to be the one to fall. He caught himself against the porch beam and glared at me, hair plastered against his forehead from the wind. "You're infuriating." "So I've been told." His jaw moved like he was grinding down a retort. "Say something," he demanded. "Anything. Shout. Lose your mind. Do something real." "I'm done giving you reactions," I said. "I'm giving you consequences." He paused, thrown off by how calmly I said it. Behind us, the door opened again. Hailey stepped onto the porch, her face pale, her hair whipping around her. She looked between us like she couldn't understand what she had started. "Owen," she said softly, "please stop. Let's just talk." "We're done talking," I said without looking at her. "We talked for months, and nothing changed. You didn't give me a chance. I gave you every chance." Cole let out a humorless sound. "Are you seriously doing this now? In front of her?" "This is exactly when to do it," I replied. The porch light flickered overhead again. The storm wind pushed at us hard enough that Hailey grabbed the railing behind her for balance. I stayed steady on my feet. Cole, on the other hand, had to widen his stance. "Owen," Hailey tried again. "I'm sorry. I didn't think it would escalate like this." "You didn't think," I said. "That's the whole problem." She shook her head, hugging herself, unable to stay still in the storm. "If you just gave me the chance to explain—" "You explained through actions," I cut in. "And now I'm responding the same way." She swallowed, looking confused and frightened at the same time. "What does that mean?" "It means," I said, "this weekend ends differently than you expected." She looked like she wanted to argue, but her gaze flicked toward the driveway as a vehicle pulled in. She stiffened. A delivery driver stepped out with a small envelope held in one hand. Delivery for Hailey Trent, he said loudly over the wind. Her mouth opened in horror. What? Right now? The driver nodded, handed her the envelope, then jogged back to his truck, eager to escape the weather. Hailey looked at the envelope like it was a live wire. She didn't open it right away. She didn't have to. Her eyes locked onto the sender printed on the front. My attorney's name. She finally broke the seal. Her hands shook as she unfolded the letter. Her eyes scanned the first paragraph, then widened, then darted to me. You filed this? Today? After everything? No, I said calmly. Earlier. She pressed a hand to her mouth. You removed my access? All of it? Yes. You froze the card? Yes. My boutique? It will adjust, I said. Or it won't. Either way, it no longer depends on me. You can't do this. You can't just… I already did. The wind swept another gust across the porch, making her stagger. Cole steadied her by the elbow, and she flinched under his touch like she hadn't expected it. What is this? She demanded, waving the letter. A warning? A threat? It's a boundary, I replied. She looked at me differently then, not with anger, not even with regret, with dawning comprehension. The kind someone gets when the floor they stood on for years finally reveals it wasn't theirs after all. Behind her, Bryce trudged up the driveway, drenched from the walk across the dunes. He saw us standing on the porch and slowed, eyes wide. You tossed my keys, he panted. Yes, I said. I had to walk in the storm, he whined. You needed the clarity. He frowned, shivering. Cole gave him a look of mixed annoyance and embarrassment. I gestured toward the driveway with my chin. Your ride home is that direction. Bryce hesitated, then shuffled past us, muttering under his breath, but too chilled and humiliated to argue. Jody and Marin appeared from around the side of the house, faces pinched and tight from the wind. They stared at me, then at Hailey, then at the attorney envelope. They started whispering to each other, shaking their heads. I turned toward them. The neighborhood association will contact you about entering the property without permission. Their eyes widened. You didn't… I did. They swallowed, nodded to each other, then hurried down the steps. The storm swallowed their footsteps quickly. Hailey stood frozen in place, barely holding the letter. Cole glared at me. You're enjoying this? I'm finishing it. You're not finishing anything. You're hurting people like it means nothing. That's the difference, I said. It means something. That's why I'm doing it. He shook his head. You can't just walk away from everyone. I can, I said, stepping off the porch. And I am. He lunged one more time, reaching for my shoulder, but he misjudged the slick boards. I stepped aside and let his own momentum carry him into the porch table. It toppled again with a loud thud, scattering items across the deck. He pushed himself up, breathing hard, glaring with a mixture of anger and confusion. You're twisted, he said. No, I replied. I'm awake. Hailey looked between us helplessly, the storm whipping her hair into her face. Owen, she whispered, voice breaking. Please don't go like this. I turned halfway toward her. You made this weekend your escape. Now it's mine. She didn't follow. She didn't call out again. She just stood there clutching the letter, watching the reality she built collapse around her. As I stepped off the last porch stair, the wind slammed the door behind me with a sharp, final sound. The storm swallowed everything after that.